The gates did not slam shut with noise, they closed in silence. And that silence may be the loudest message Prince Harry has ever received. Because behind palace walls, behind diplomatic smiles, behind years of careful restraint, something explosive appears to have happened in April 2026. The era of maybe he'll return someday seems over. The whispers are turning into declarations. The bridges look burned. And the man once born into one of the most powerful institutions on earth now appears to be facing a brutal reality. Title in name, but no shield in practice. For years, the public was fed a question. Could Harry still be half in, half out? Could he live the celebrity life in California while still carrying the invisible power of the crown? Could he criticize the machine while benefiting from it? Could he walk away, yet remain protected by everything he left behind? That question may now have an answer, and it is colder than anyone expected. According to the transcript, senior palace insiders confirmed that Harry had been permanently removed from the inner circle, stripped of representational authority, and denied any realistic path back into official royal life. Read that again. Not paused, not delayed, not under review, removed. That single word changes everything. It suggests not a family disagreement, but an institutional decision. A final calculation. A file stamped closed. And what triggered it? That is where the story becomes even darker. Reports claim the palace viewed recent Sussex activity in the United States as an unauthorized shadow diplomacy campaign. In other words, while the official monarchy operated through constitutional channels, another version of royal influence was allegedly being built overseas through celebrity networks, media power, and carefully staged appearances. Not on paper, not legally, but visually, symbolically, strategically. Then came the Ukraine moment. Harry's surprise appearance in Kyiv was described as a turning point. Publicly, it looked humanitarian. Admirers called it bold. But critics inside the system allegedly saw something else entirely. A private royal figure stepping into geopolitical territory usually reserved for statesmen and official representatives. That is not a small detail. That is the kind of move institutions remember. And if that wasn't enough, another shockwave reportedly came from Washington. Donald Trump was said to have publicly emphasized that Harry is simply a private citizen under ordinary U.S. law, not a protected diplomatic figure. That statement, if taken seriously, lands like a hammer. Because image can survive scandal. Ego can survive criticism. But status? Once publicly downgraded, status is much harder to restore. Think about the symbolism. A prince who once moved with state-level prestige, now allegedly being framed as just another resident navigating paperwork, taxes, legal exposure, and private security bills. No sovereign umbrella. No automatic deference. No institutional cover. The contrast is staggering. And perhaps the most humiliating detail of all involves a royal visit to America. Harry's camp reportedly cited schedule conflicts to explain why he was absent from official events involving King Charles III and Queen Camilla. But insiders allegedly insisted something harsher. He had never been invited in the first place. If true, that is devastating, because refusing an invitation is power. Never receiving one is exclusion. Notice the pattern. Public confidence, private distancing, statements about schedules, silence about access, carefully maintained appearances hiding a harsher backstage reality. This is how elite separations often happen, not through dramatic announcements, but through missing seats, absent names, and doors that no longer open. Then comes the money question. Royal life is expensive, monumentally expensive. Security teams, legal teams, staff, travel, estates, branding, reputation management, it all burns cash at terrifying speed. Working royals are backed by structures centuries old. Private celebrities are backed by contracts. Contracts can end. Public interest can cool. Trends can shift overnight. The transcript claims the Sussex model depended heavily on commercial partnerships, prestige optics, and monetizing royal proximity. But what happens when the institution formally signals that proximity no longer means influence? What happens when the magic title remains, but the machinery behind it disappears? Suddenly, the brand risks becoming costume jewelry, still shiny, but no longer priceless. And palace strategists may understand something brutal. Relevance in the modern age is oxygen. Whoever controls attention controls narrative. For years, every Sussex interview, every leak, every memoir chapter pulled headlines away from the monarchy. But if the palace stops reacting entirely, if it gives nothing back, then conflict loses fuel. Silence becomes strategy. Starvation by indifference. Meanwhile, Prince William reportedly emerges in this story as the cold architect of the next phase. A slimmed-down monarchy, cleaner lines, fewer variables, tighter discipline. Not emotional revenge. Institutional survival. And institutions are often at their most dangerous when they stop being emotional emotional and start being efficient. So where does that leave Harry? Too famous to disappear, too controversial to reset, too royal to be ordinary, yet perhaps too private to wield real estate power. It is a strange trap: global recognition without global authority, massive attention without secure footing, a prince in headlines but maybe no longer in the room where decisions are made. And the most chilling part? None of this required shouting. No televised banishment, no dramatic family showdown, just protocols. Invitations withheld, labels changed, status clarified, distance formalized. Sometimes the end of an era doesn't look like war, sometimes it looks like administration. If this is truly the palace's final message, then it may be sharper than any public statement ever could be. You may keep the name, but not the leverage. The next phase of this story may be the most humiliating of all, because once titles stop protecting you, paperwork begins judging you. And paperwork has no loyalty, no nostalgia, no sympathy for birthright. According to the transcript, the real crisis surrounding Prince Harry may no longer be palace emotion or family tension. It may be legal status, financial pressure, and the brutal mechanics of life without institutional armor. That is where many glamorous stories collapse, not in scandal, but in administration. For years, Harry's image carried something priceless: implied power. Even after stepping away, many still assumed some invisible royal safety net existed. A prince is still a prince, people thought. Doors open, problems soften, governments cooperate, rules bend quietly. But the transcript argues that by April 2026, that illusion was shattered. Harry was allegedly reframed not as a roaming representative of the crown, but as a private foreign resident subject to normal U.S. systems. And that single shift changes everything, because ordinary systems ask ordinary questions. What visa? What disclosures? What tax obligations? What source of income? What long-term residency basis? Those questions are dull on television, but devastating in real life. A man who once moved through the world on symbolism now potentially faces forms, filings, deadlines, reviews, and scrutiny. That contrast alone feels almost cinematic. Then comes the most explosive allegation in the transcript, that Harry's own public admissions about past substance use, particularly in his memoir Spare, created a vulnerability critics could weaponize. Whether or not any legal consequence follows, the political symbolism is sharp. Confessions that sold books may now be cited by opponents as reasons for review. A story once monetized can return as evidence in the court of public pressure. And if you think that is harsh, look at this security issue. When Harry was a working royal, security carried the aura of state necessity. It was not merely protection, it was protocol, prestige, sovereign relevance. But the transcript claims that in private life, the burden falls onto personal finances, elite teams, round-the-clock coverage, travel planning, threat assessments, litigation, estimates in the millions, every year, every month, adding pressure. That means fame becomes expensive in a terrifying way. You cannot live normally because you are too recognizable, yet you cannot build the state because you are no longer official. So you pay to protect a life that itself requires protection because of the identity you can never fully escape. It is a golden cage with monthly invoices. Then there is the brand problem. The Sussex model, according to the transcript, relied on commercial deals built around access, mystery, insider perspective, and royal adjacency. Streaming platforms, publishers, global media, many saw them as the California branch of royal intrigue. But what happens when the palace successfully signals that no real channel exists? What happens when there is no backstage pass left to sell? Suddenly, the business proposition weakens. Without fresh palace access, without official functions, without state relevance, they must compete in the crowded celebrity marketplace like everyone else. And that marketplace is ruthless. Younger stars arrive daily, trends move hourly, loyalty lasts minutes. Royal mystique once separated them. If that mystique fades, the economics change fast. The transcript also paints the so-called pseudo-royal tours to places like Nigeria and Colombia as attempts to preserve prestige optics, motorcades, ceremonial welcomes, headlines, symbolic influence. But symbolism without authority can become dangerous. It invites mockery from critics and suspicion from institutions. If governments realize there is no reward from London attached to hosting such visits, enthusiasm can cool overnight. Then comes the family dimension, colder than any legal file. Prince William is described as taking a firm line. Harry is family by blood, but institutionally separate. That distinction sounds polite, yet it may be devastating. It means you can be remembered privately while erased professionally. Loved perhaps in some personal sense, yet irrelevant to the machine you were born inside. And machines move on. That may be the real wound here. The monarchy, according to the transcript, appears increasingly streamlined, focused, and public publicly stable without the constant turbulence of the Sussex saga. King Charles III continues. William advances. New working combinations form. Ceremonies happen. Crowds gather. The institution proves the oldest truth of power: survive the person, preserve the structure. For Harry, that creates a nightmare paradox. If he attacks the institution, critics say he is bitter. If he stays silent, he risks fading relevance. If he leans into celebrity, he loses princely seriousness. If he leans into royalty, he is reminded he is outside the gate. Every move carries a trap. And what of Meghan Markle in this equation? The transcript frames the Sussex brand as jointly tied to reinvention, influence, philanthropy, and commercial ambition. But shared brands carry shared pressure. When public sentiment shifts, when deals wobble, when image fractures, internal strain often grows behind closed doors. Not because love vanishes, but because pressure multiplies. The most haunting image in this entire saga may not be exile, lawsuits, or headlines. It may be this: a man born into ancient certainty, now living in modern uncertainty. Once escorted by systems he never had to think about, now forced to think about every system. Once protected by identity, now negotiating identity as liability. And the palace may understand that time itself is on their side. Every year away weakens memory. Every new royal generation resets attention. Every ceremony without Harry normalizes absence. Every headline not answered reduces drama. Institutions win by enduring longer than emotion. So if April 2026 truly marked a final severance, then the punishment was not dramatic banishment. It was something more sophisticated. Let the world keep calling him prince while making sure the title no longer moves anything important. That is colder than exile. That is symbolic neutralization. Now the gates appear closed, the invitations selective, the leverage diminished, and the costs very real. Harry remains globally famous, endlessly discussed, instantly recognized. But fame is not sovereignty. Headlines are not power. Nostalgia is not protection. And somewhere in that contrast lies the sting of this entire story. He escaped the palace walls, only to discover the walls were carrying him the whole time.